Hey guys, I'm Alistair, and this is the Nike Zoom Fly 6. For anyone not familiar then, the Zoom Fly series is really one of those running shoes that allows you to push the pace on speed training sessions, so that includes tempo runs, interval sessions, but also it extends into racing as well. And the great thing about it is it's not as expensive as counterparts like the Alphafly 3, for example, and also the Vaporfly 3. So you get a carbon fiber plated running shoe, which is actually fast, all for a fraction of the price. But does it deliver enough to be able to call it a proper race day shoe? Or is it more of a glorified daily trainer that allows you to run fast? Well, you're about to find out all about that and more. Time to go over the key specifications then. First off, they cost $170. I'll let you know if they're worth that price tag at the end of this review. They weigh 8.5 ounces or 241 grams for a size US men's 9. That's my pair. And they have an 8mm drop from heel to toe. That's 42mm off the ground at the heel and 34mm off the ground under the toe. The midsole is made of 3 parts. So firstly, you've got the ZoomX foam on the top, and then the SR02 foam on the bottom, and you have a carbon fiber plate which runs between the two. More on those foams and how they affect performance in just a moment. The upper is dual layer, and it's very soft on the inside, but also very protective and durable on the outside. And there's plenty of cushioning on the collars and the articulated heel counter at the rear. The outsole is using rubber compound for the most part, but where you see this cutout here with a little window to the carbon fiber plate, this is just foam. So you're not going to get a huge amount of traction here, and durability will be compromised because of it. But most people will strike on these pads here at the rear and also at the forefoot, particularly at the forefoot with this running shoe because it is a speed shoe. So most people will be running faster and landing more towards the front of the shoe. Sizing and fit then. Well, the Zoom Fly 6 has a true to size fit and a medium width, but is a little bit snug in the toe box. That's not to say it's narrow or too tight. It just fits really well for the average size foot. Meaning if you do have wide feet, you might not get on with these. The dual layer woven mesh upper does provide really good breathability, but also good lockdown. So it just creates a nice supportive fit around your foot, which is really what you want for a speed training shoe. You don't want to be losing energy from any slippage from a bad fit, because then you're just not going to have a very optimized performance forward shoe. So they've done a great job here getting a nice lockdown, and very easy to get a quick fit as well. And despite the high stack height on this shoe, which is actually the highest stack height of any Nike race day shoe, despite that high stack height, they are actually quite stable, and I believe that's because of this new foam combination with the plate and a wider platform underneath when you compare it to the more dedicated, more expensive race day shoes like the Vaporfly 3, for example. Very quickly, I'm going to compare it to the previous version, the Zoom Fly 5. Somehow that version escaped being reviewed by me. But anyway, I'm going to give you some of the key specifications on how it differs, and also more information that I've gleaned from reading on the web. The Zoom Fly 5 was actually 10% lighter than this version, and let me tell you, 10% in a running shoe is going to be noticeable. So for anyone out there who says, oh, didn't really notice it felt light, well, I know this from experience from other running shoes and new versions coming out. A 10% weight difference is actually quite substantial when it comes to running longer distances or picking up the pace. You notice it. It's also got slightly more foam in there, more ZoomX foam because of the higher stack height. So you do get more energy return and bounce from this midsole. And because it's lighter overall, it kind of compounds the feeling of having a snappier, more responsive ride. The carbon fiber plate is also a little bit more flexible than the previous version. That will just give a slightly smoother transition from heel to toe or midfoot to toe takeoff. As you can see, it doesn't take a huge amount for me to flex this running shoe at all. Sure, I can tell there's a carbon fiber plate in there, and I do get a nice amount of rebound and response from that energy stored. But when you compare it to something like the Alphafly 3, for example, which, by the way, is the most stiff plate when you compare it to the Vaporfly 3, this one here is really hard. It's very hard to flex, but that means you get a lot of energy stored when you're running fast in a shoe like this. Compare that to the Vaporfly 3, well, I can flex that no problem, but again, not as flexible as the Zoom Fly 6. And all those things matter when it comes to running and efficiency. So a more flexible shoe like this is not going to have quite as an efficient ride over longer distances. And there have been studies to prove that carbon fiber plates undoubtedly give you much higher performance, but there's so many different types of plates, different lengths. Not all of them are full length, and not all of them are as stiff as the Alphafly 3, for example. But there were tests to suggest it gives you 4% more efficiency when running a marathon. And I can tell you from experience, carbon fiber plates really do give you an advantage out there. So anyway, things to be aware of when you're choosing your running shoes. Not all carbon plates are the same when it comes to the performance they give you. If you're enjoying this review, please give a video a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel for more running shoe reviews just like this one. I always keep things authentic, honest, and as insightful as possible in hopes that whatever shoe review you're watching, it'll give you an idea of whether that shoe is going to be good for you. But if at any point of any of my reviews you're not sure, you got more questions about that particular shoe, just let me know in the comments down below and I'll get back to you. But also, if you're just really not sure where to start with a good pair of running shoes for you, then let me know your circumstances in the comments down below, and I'll get you hooked up with the best running shoes for you. Congratulations, you've made it to my performance review. I'm going to start by talking about the midsole, because that's really the standout feature that gives the Zoom Fly the kind of name that it's built for itself. It's the midsole here. If you are familiar with the Alphafly 3, it does look quite similar. It's actually got this very similar kick out at the rear, and just in general, it could easily be mistaken for that midsole, but it's very different. I'm going to start with the top layer, which is Zoom X foam. Most of you are probably familiar with this foam. It's one of the most popular racing foams for Nike because it's just awesome. It's so bouncy, and the energy return you get from it is fantastic. It feels great underfoot. And that's a really great foam if you are training for a marathon, for example, because it just gives you a nice bouncy, fun ride. But something to be aware of is this bottom layer of SR02 foam, which is the highly technical name for Nike's proprietary foam on the bottom. It kind of dampens the pop of the shoe a little bit. So I feel like if Nike had Zoom X foam all the way across this midsole, you would have a much more responsive and bouncier kind of ride, giving you more performance on the run. But instead you do get a little bit of dampening there, and that does reduce the amount of energy return that you can actually get out of this carbon fiber plate that runs through the shoe. But the dampening does make it more comfortable. It makes it nice and soft on the run. So pros and cons for sure. Something to be aware of. Moving on to that carbon fiber plate. Whilst it does give you good energy return, it's not as aggressive as a shoe like the Alphafly 3, for example. It does give you a nice bit of stability in the shoe because of that rigidity from the plate. So it does help stabilize your foot from doing any lateral roll, which I really like, feels great, and I love the fact it's a wide platform, giving stability to runners who want to run fast but don't want an overly narrow, pure racing shoe. This is where this fits in really well. It's kind of like an intermediate, not entry level as such, but more accessible race day shoe for people who don't want to spend $250, for example. And also for those who don't like the instability of some of those super shoes or carbon fiber race day shoes, because a lot of them are very narrow underfoot and a lot of them have very squishy foams, leading to a lot of instability, especially if you're a heavier runner where you do compress that foam. You guys might notice instability in race day shoes. A lot of them are just very narrow as well, meaning the fit isn't very comfortable. I guess they're just modeled on elite racers who tend to have slimmer feet. So having a shoe like this makes it more accessible, makes race day shoes more accessible to people who have more volume in their feet, but also want extra stability. Now I have to call out this cutout in the midsole. If you are running on any gravel sections where there might be some large stones, they can get caught in here. It's perfect trap for stones. So unfortunately I have to call that out because it can very easily happen. That said, most of you probably aren't going to be doing speed training sessions on gravel or running over rocks, but these things happen. Another highlight for me is just the upper really. It's just very comfortable, very supportive. There is rigidity around the collars here, which helps support your foot within the shoe. So you've already got that stability in the midsole thanks to the plate and the combination of foams. That helps that lateral kind of inward roll that you might have if you overpronate. But then you've got the support of the upper, which helps support your foot within the shoe, just kind of stop your foot moving around on top of the whatever movement you might have from the midsole. So I really like how supportive it is. I like the tongue. It's got this very nice shape, which is held up very well because it is gusseted inside, so it doesn't slip anywhere. And there's just tons of padding around these collars and heel counter. I like the fact it's articulated as well. That just means it doesn't put as much pressure on your Achilles. It also makes them very easy to slip on. And then at 8.5 ounces, it's a pretty lightweight shoe, especially for a racing shoe that only cost $170. I mean, that's a fantastic way to get into getting hold of a shoe that allows you to really pick up the pace and use that one shoe for speed training, but also transitioning over to race day, which is nice because you'll be familiar with your racing shoe because you will be training in it. That said, of course, it doesn't match the efficiency and propulsion of a dedicated race day shoe, but it's a fraction of the price. You've made it to my final verdict. Is it worth $170? Well, yes, if you've been following me throughout this entire review, you've probably gathered by now that yes, you get a lot for $170. If you need a plated trainer for getting in fast daily training, speed sessions like interval training and tempo runs, you want a bit of stability in there. You don't get on with other super shoes because they're too narrow, they don't fit most foot shapes, and you don't want to break the bank, then the Zoomfly 6 is actually a huge category. There are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to fall for a shoe like this, and for good reason. It fits a really nice segment that is much needed. Now, I guess the nearest competitor right now for me would be the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. Also a fantastic speed training shoe that you can use for race day as well. I think it comes in at $170 too. So if you want to check out that shoe, it's fantastic. Follow my link up there to watch that video. I'll put a link in description as well. And then if you do want a pure race day shoe, then you can't go wrong with the Alphafly 3. If you're familiar with Nike, you enjoy their shoes, you enjoy how they fit, well, the Alphafly 3 is one of those super shoes or race day shoes that actually has a nice accommodating fit. It's not crazy narrow. So that's another option if you do want a dedicated, all-out, super fast racing shoe, then I recommend checking out this one instead. And of course, if you're not afraid of a price tag, then that's a great option. But for everyone else, check out the Zoomfly 6. You won't be disappointed. Well, thanks for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, if you did, please give the video a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel for more running shoe reviews just like this one. Thanks again. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.